5 easy residence permits in the Americas. Today we're going to talk about some of the easiest residence permits that exist on this beautiful planet. So let's get started with the first one. The first option is Panama. And Panama's Friendly Nations Visa program has been available for many years. It has been updated in recent years because Panama wants to attract people who are more serious, and they've also taken one country off the table, and that country is Taiwan. But if you happen to be a citizen of one of the 50 countries that have an agreement with Panama, then you can apply for the Friendly Nations Visa program, which allows you to either work for a company in Panama or sponsor yourself through a company in Panama. And so you can pick up a residence permit and live in the country pretty much on a permanent basis. Panama is a Latin country, so it's very liberal, and Panama wants to attract highly skilled workers because Panama wants to raise money. And generally speaking, people who live in Panama, they appreciate the warm weather, they appreciate the tax-friendly environment because Panama does not tax your overseas income. Panama applies a territorial tax system, meaning only income generated from within the borders of Panama is taxed, right? And still at a very friendly tax rate. So that means if you happen to have income from an overseas company, if you bring a pension with you to Panama, if you're employed by an overseas company and that overseas company pays you money, then you don't need to pay taxes on that overseas income in Panama. So many advantages, right? What's also great about Panama is its strategic location in Central America, meaning you can take a flight to North America and be there in a couple of hours. Whereas if you were to live in a place like Chile, it would take you a lot more time to get back home. If home is Canada, the United States, so a definite advantage of living in Panama is of course the location, right? And what's also great about Panama, if you love tropical beaches, if you love warm weather, then it's definitely a great option because Panama really only has one season, right? Well, technically two seasons. One is hot and humid and the other one is wet and humid. So in the wet season you have more rain than you have in the dry season. So the tropical weather is definitely something that you want to consider. Next up, we have Uruguay, a country located in South America. What's interesting about Uruguay is that it is also a country that offers a territorial tax system. Again, it's the same concept as in Panama, right? If you have income from overseas and you want to bring that income with you into Uruguay, then Uruguay would not tax you on that income. What's also great about Uruguay is that it has some sort of a good location, if you want to be close to Argentina, if you want to be close to Brazil, because in Brazil you have beautiful beaches, right? You have many dating options, and it's a great location. You're very far away from what's going on in Europe. So if you think that war in Europe could escalate, then a place like Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, definitely makes a lot more sense. So in Uruguay, you definitely need to pay taxes on income derived from within the borders of Uruguay. It's the same in pretty much any country except for very few tax havens that don't do that. Uruguay is one of the most European countries that exist in South America because you have great architecture, right? It's pretty clean, it's organized. There's less corruption in Uruguay than there is in a country like Colombia or Brazil, right? And the drug trade does not go through Uruguay, it goes up north. So there are a lot of advantages. Uruguay is pretty safe, much safer than most Latin countries. So it is definitely recommended, if you're looking for safety, if you're looking for good quality of life, if you're looking for good health care, if you're looking for a well-balanced life, then Uruguay probably is a good option for you. Mexico happens to be the most popular country North Americans choose to immigrate to, and has to do with, again, the proximity to home. It's pretty easy to get into Mexico. If you want to drive your car across one of the southern borders, it's pretty easy to get into Mexico by car. It's also not very difficult to fly there. Within a handful of hours you could be in Mexico. Likewise, if you want to travel home and you want to have that close proximity to home, then Mexico is definitely an advisable place for that. Whereas if you were to live in a place like Chile, Brazil, Argentina, you're looking at a long haul flight. It's more expensive, takes a lot more time, and also the time zone would be different, right? It would be a few hours ahead of, for instance, Central Standard Time or Eastern Standard Time, if you were to live in Brazil. So a definite advantage that Mexico offers. If you want to pick up temporary residence in Mexico, you can do that through one of the consulates or embassies in your home city. It's actually pretty easy to do. The main requirement is for you to have a decent amount of savings. So we're talking, as of shooting this video, it's roughly $40,000 that you must have had in your account every single month for 12 consecutive months, right? So if you can prove that, if you can prove that you had a decent amount of savings, then you may qualify for temporary residency in Mexico. Of course, there's also the option to obtain permanent residency in Mexico. And how it works is that for most consulates, you must be at least 55 years of age before you can apply. So they don't really process applications for younger people. I know that's unfortunate, but that's just the truth. And you either have income or you have a good amount of savings. And if you want to get permanent residency right away, you need a lot more than 40,000 in savings. You need roughly, I think right now, 130,000 in savings. But again, it's a way for you to get into a very liberal country without investing any money at all. So all you need to do is prove your savings and pick up either temporary residency or permanent residency in Mexico. Mexico is a very diverse country. If you are into tropical beaches, if you love tropical weather, you know, you've got these options on the Caribbean side of Mexico. You have plenty of options there. If you like the colonial lifestyle, then central Mexico is for you. Or if you want to live on the coast, on the west coast, then there are plenty of options there as well. And Mexico, you know, people worry a lot about the safety. I've spent a lot of time in Mexico. It really depends on where you're located. And the further you go away from the tourist attractions, from the tourist, you know, hotspots, the safer it actually gets. Of course, there are some exceptions like Sinaloa. Next up, we have Paraguay, another country located in South America. It borders Brazil, Bolivia, and Argentina. What people love about Paraguay is its territorial tax system. You know, if you have, again, income from overseas and you want to bring that income with you into Paraguay, then that income would not be taxed at all. So that's a key advantage to an entrepreneur or to somebody who wants to settle down in a place, you know, spend a couple of years there, bank a lot of money, you know, you want to maybe preserve capital, you know, you want to build your bankroll, whatever your goal may be, you can achieve it in Paraguay because overseas income is not taxed. And also local income, you know, is taxed at a flat tax rate of 10%. So Paraguay, you know, is really a great place, you know, if you want to reduce your taxes. Paraguay also has one of the lowest cost of living in the Americas, in Latin America pretty much. So, you know, if you are living on a limited budget and if you want to save money, if you want to build a business, and you also want to take advantage of the cheap labor market, and I also need to add the skilled labor market because many people in Paraguay are actually very skilled, you know, speak English fluently. That's one of the key advantages of living in some Latin countries, also including Argentina, of course. Then I think Paraguay is a great option, right? So you kill multiple birds with just one stone. There have been some changes to Paraguay's residence programs. So these changes just happened this year, so we're in 2022. By the time you're watching this video, it might very well be 2023. So what has changed is that now you can become a resident of Paraguay, but only a temporary resident if you can prove that you can support yourself financially. So we're talking about economic solvency. So if you can prove that you have a certain amount of money in the bank, you know, it's kind of similar as what we saw, or what we talked about with Mexico, right? If you can prove that, if you can prove savings, then you can move to Paraguay and, you know, pick up a great temporary residence card without a whole lot of money spent, right? So it is a really great option. Permanent residence is still available to those who can invest at least $70,000 into a local business. Unfortunately, this option has changed because before, not too long ago, you could actually become a permanent resident of Paraguay without investing any money. All they required you to do was to deposit about $4,500, $4,700 into a local bank account and you had your permanent residency card. Unfortunately, that option no longer exists. So now you would need to invest a decent amount of money. You know, putting $70,000 or more at risk is quite some money for most people, but it is a legitimate option. It's a real option. It's a great option for you to get permanent residency in Paraguay. Peru is another country that I wanted to talk about because it isn't talked about a whole lot. And what's good about Peru is that it's pretty easy to get residency there. So if you want to open up a company in Peru, and again, you want to issue yourself a work permit, then you could become a resident of Peru. One of the downsides of living in Peru with residency is, of course, that you need to spend a certain amount of days per year in the country. And we're talking about 183 days or more that you need to have spent in the country in order for you to not lose your resident card. So there is quite a bit of a contingency, here where you say, maybe I don't want to do that. But Peru is a beautiful country, beautiful culture, indigenous culture, right? A very historic place. You could also become a resident of Peru, if you want to attend like a school, if you want to go to university, or if you want to take a Spanish class, then you could also pick up a long-term visa. Also, if you have an overseas company and you made a certain amount of money, or you can prove that you have recurring monthly income, then you may also become a resident of Peru. I also wanted to throw in a little bonus, and that bonus is Argentina, because an Argentina passport is just extremely strong. You can pretty much live throughout most of Latin America, with the exception of 3 countries in the northern part of South America. We're talking about French Guiana, Suriname, and Guyana. It's very, very, very powerful. So I definitely recommend it to somebody who is willing to spend at least 2 years in Argentina, because that is the minimum requirement for you to become a citizen. Sometimes it may also take 3 years. It really depends. But if you want to pick up a great passport, if you want to give up maybe your current passport for whatever reason, people have their reasons, right? And you want to move to Argentina, you resonate with the culture, you love Spanish, you love living in a Latin country, right? If that speaks to you, then you may consider getting an Argentina passport, because, if it's very difficult for you to get into Brazil or Uruguay or Chile, once you have an Argentina passport, you have freedom of movement, right? You can live in most South American countries. So that's something to consider. Argentina is not the most economically stable country. It's actually the exact opposite, right? It's pretty fragile right now in terms of economics, right? But Argentina has a lot to offer. It has great culture. It's very European, right? You have great architecture. You have monuments. It has so much to offer, right? It's a very historic place. It's very Italian. So if you like the European vibe, if you want to live in a place like that, then maybe Argentina is for you. Which of the discussed residence permits speaks to you? Leave a comment below and let us know. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'm uploading new videos on digital nomad locations, travel updates, and investment advice several times a week right now. And if you got some more time left, check out these videos. Thank you for watching.